area is more than 1.5 million square kilometers. That's more than the states of Texas and California put together, and it is one of the most controversial places on the planet. Why? It is here that the Yucatan Current gathers its strength and flows powerfully into the Atlantic, turning into the Gulf Stream. Its warm waters literally fill the whole of Europe with life. But this is also where hurricanes are born, bringing death and destruction. The most destructive hurricane in U.S. history was Katrina, the spawn of the Gulf of Mexico. This region itself is full of life, and people benefit from it freely. The Gulf of Mexico yields more fish, shrimp, and shellfish annually than the South and Mid-Atlantic, the Chesapeake and New England combined. Yet, the Gulf of Mexico is also associated with horrific, catastrophic events that constitute nothing short of a benchmark of total extermination of the whole creation. What is it that makes the Gulf such a life-affirming and simultaneously perilous place? Let's drain the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico and see what's there. What secrets do the waters of the Gulf conceal? There are many secrets. Scientists keep finding evidence of a pretty dark past, and a lot of that evidence is pretty creepy. Secrets of the Gulf of Mexico. At least 300 million years ago, there was no great reservoir in the south of North America. The plains stretched here with a soil similar by composition to that of the Yucatan Peninsula. The entire area was part of the supercontinent Pangaea. Researchers have long believed that the Gulf of Mexico basin was formed by riftogenesis, the splitting of a giant landmass. The Earth's crust stretched, fractured, and sagged between present-day Florida and the Yucatan. Thus, as a result of natural geological processes, a giant body of water arose. And that was only one hypothesis, the rift hypothesis. And there were others, the rotation hypothesis, the uplift hypothesis, all of which suggested formation of the Gulf by natural processes. But what if it really wasn't like that? Or at least not quite like that? The most meticulous scientists were puzzled by the obvious inconsistencies in each of the versions. But without new data, there was nothing left to do but stick to established hypotheses. Thus, versions of natural formation of the Gulf remained preferable for many years, until new data from other places began supplementing all the theories. Data from very far places, not even related to the American continents, let alone the Yucatan. How did the asteroid hypothesis originate? In the early 1980s, research scientist Luis Alvarez and his colleagues found unusually high concentrations of iridium in a geologic boundary layer corresponding to the period between the Cretaceous and Paleogene eras. Iridium is an extremely rare element that is not usually found on the Earth's surface, but is quite noticeably present in asteroids and meteorites. This allowed scientists to assume that during that period, the Earth was shaken by a rare cataclysm, the fall of a large asteroid at least several kilometers in size. In addition, scientists also found signs of a global planetary fire, as well as deposits of deep-sea microscopic organisms at the geological layer boundary. This also contributed to the theory that there was a large-scale extinction of life on Earth after the asteroid impact, and dinosaurs were only one of the episodes in this extinction. In fact, up to 80% of biological species became extinct. The asteroid hypothesis was becoming more and more weighty, but there was a but. Where is the crater? For quite some time, scientists have been scouting the planet for evidence of asteroid impacts that could have caused such a global catastrophe. But for a long time, none of the impact craters found looked big enough or of a suitable age to indicate the very killer of the dinosaurs. The answer came, as often happens, from an unexpected perspective. During one of the geological studies on the Yucatan Peninsula, scientists put forward an interesting hypothesis. The fact is that the Yucatan literally abounds with amazing natural formations. Sinkholes, they are also called cenotes, formed by the erosion of soft limestone. They can be tens or even hundreds of meters deep. This is really something amazing, even from a visual point of view. It evokes associations with some fantastic planet, like James Cameron's Pandora from Avatar. This phenomenon is not so rare on our Earth, but it is here on the Yucatan where scientists have noticed an oddity. First, many cenotes are connected by deep underground channels. But that's not all. They also show a remarkably similar structure, notably different from similar sinkholes elsewhere. For example, it was found that the deposits, despite expectations, have a variable direction. Vertical deposits alternated with horizontal ones in the upper layer, and then vertical ones again. For a layman, this can hardly explain a lot, but experts in this area realized millions of years ago, something so powerful and massive happened and literally put the whole geological horizons rear up. And finally, the main peculiarity which led scientists directly to the final conclusions. The main clusters of cenotes are located in a ring shape with a diameter of about 180 kilometers. If you look at the scheme of location of these formations from above, there can be hardly any doubts. The Gulf of Mexico is an ancient crater from the impact of a large celestial body. It remained only to confirm the assumption by other sides and finally make sure that this is the asteroid that ended the era of the dinosaurs on Earth. And it was quite simple. Today, millions of years after its formation, the impact site is hidden not only under the waters of the Gulf of Mexico, but also under a multi-meter layer of sedimentary rock, which had been deposited over tens of millions of years. The only reliable way to accurately calculate the age of the crater and determine whether it dates back to the time of the dinosaurs' extinction is to analyze rocks from deep within the crater itself, rather than from the surface. In 2016, an international team of scientists drilled a hole using a specially adapted oil platform. They consistently took samples of limestone to the surface, diving deeper and deeper. Finally, the team came across a layer that was dramatically different from the previous ones. It was no longer trivial sedimentary limestone. It was molten and hardened rock, and the samples proved that this rock is about 66 million years old. That is, it was formed at the very time that the dinosaurs died out. There was no longer any doubt at all, but the team continued the research to find out the details of that devastating event. The results were staggering. According to the calculations, the power of the impact was far from being comparable to even the most powerful hydrogen bomb tests, even if all the tests were put together and multiplied many times over. The power was comparable to the 10 billions of bombs dropped on Hiroshima. Again, 10 billions of Hiroshima in one place, instantly. It was a quite ordinary asteroid, of which there are thousands in the solar system. Most of them never even come close to our planet, and the ones that do almost always fly by. Almost. But not that time. Not on that fatal day. Or night. It doesn't matter. Here's how it was. 10 minutes before impact. Nothing yet portends disaster. Dinosaurs and other small animals are grazing in the vast spaces of the ancient Earth. Meanwhile, it's not just a big rock that's approaching Earth. It's not even a rock. It is a mountain about 10 kilometers in size, larger than the present Everest. This mountain is still far away, several tens of thousands of kilometers from Earth, but it's rushing along at a tremendous speed, tens of kilometers per second, 5 minutes before the impact. The asteroid is almost close to Earth. It's already below the orbit where geostationary satellites are now hovering. If this were happening now, it would have been spotted by all amateur astronomers, and it's hard to imagine the scale of the panic that would have overtaken the entire mankind. At that time, 66 million years ago, there was no one to panic. The creatures inhabiting the planet did not suspect anything. But the collision was already inevitable, and the near future did not offer a single good scenario. Only bad and very bad ones. Everything went by the worst scenario. The asteroid enters the atmosphere from the northeast at a steep angle to the horizon, 60 degrees, and that's part of the worst-case scenario. Had it fallen at an angle of 15 degrees or vertically, the consequences would not have been so dire. 2 minutes before the impact. As the asteroid enters the dense layers of the atmosphere at tremendous speed, it creates mind-blowing pressure, and this, combined with friction, leads to an explosive formation of plasma with unimaginable temperatures. This mortal light spectacle was noticed by all higher living beings on half of the planet. First, there was a blinding flash in the sky, and then it didn't disappear. The poor dinosaurs watch as the giant ball of fire rolls across the sky for a few seconds and disappears over the horizon. Then, this silent celestial fiery chariot is caught up by a deafening rumble. It is a sound wave as the asteroid is moving much, much faster than the speed of sound. This wave is comparable in power to the shock wave from a nuclear explosion. Even a passage of the asteroid in the atmosphere brings death and destruction. Radiation causes plants to catch fire, makes many animals blind, and kills them. But this is hardly anything, almost nothing compared to what will happen in a few seconds. The impact. For a few seconds, nothing happened, and then the whole sky blindingly flashed. An asteroid crashed into the place of the modern Gulf of Mexico near the northern shore of the Yucatan Peninsula. The impact of a huge 12-kilometer cosmic boulder at a speed of 20 kilometers per second produced a flash that would have outshone 1,000 suns. The energy released after the crater formation was equal to the impact of about 10 billion atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima. In a second, the asteroid penetrated the Earth's crust to a depth of 20 kilometers. The impact raised a fireball of molten rock that lit up the sky for thousands of kilometers. The air is instantly heated to a temperature that ignites forests and grasslands over vast areas. The shockwave blows away everything in its path, leaving behind a scorched desert with a Martian or even Venusian landscape. Tsunamis as high as 100 meters appear in the ocean, cover the coastline, and go far into the depths of the continents. Across the surface, the Earth shudders with powerful earthquakes that cause rockfalls and landslides. It's hard to imagine what the dinosaurs felt at that moment, but many didn't have time to feel anything. Many died instantly from the heat and shockwave. Others desperately tried to flee or hide, but this does not save them from further consequences. Approximately 70 billion tons of pulverized rock, soot, ash, and carbon monoxide rose in the eruptions. and then began to fall back into the atmosphere. Their friction against the air caused enormous heating. A huge red-hot cloud of dust swept across the planet, scorching everything in its path. It was approaching the region of present-day Mongolia at 18,000 kilometers per hour. In an hour and a half after the asteroid hit, the temperature there reached 150 degrees Celsius. Almost every living creature died. The asteroid threw about 300 million tons of sulfur into the atmosphere, which formed a heavy acid rain. It also raised a huge amount of dust in the air, which darkened the sun for several years. This led to a dramatic cooling of the climate and a global starvation. Almost all food chains collapsed. Most species could not adapt to such changes and became extinct. Let's indulge in fantasies for a while and imagine that some dinosaur eggs somehow remained intact underground. From them, in due time, young individuals hatched. Tiny groups of lizards emerged in different places. But cold, starvation, and disease quickly killed them. Then, the era of the dinosaurs was definitively over. And that's how the era of the dinosaurs, the largest and most diverse creatures that ever inhabited the Earth, ended. They were replaced by small mammals, which survived because of their ability to maintain body heat and eat various kinds of food. They became the basis for a new evolutionary branch, and so began the era of mammals. And a giant pit, 30 kilometers deep and about 200 kilometers in diameter, was formed at the site of the asteroid impact. It was, of course, immediately filled with the waters of the ocean. 66 million years later, another dominant species would call this hole the Gulf of Mexico and would immediately begin extracting its riches as soon as they learn how to drill the seabed. Yes, we are talking about the black gold, the main wealth of the depths of the Gulf. The Gulf of Mexico is one of the most critical regions for energy resources and infrastructure, even globally, let alone for the United States. It accounts for 15% of total U.S. crude oil production and 5% of total natural gas production. But why is there so much oil in the Gulf? Let's try to drain the bottom and see. Why is there so much oil in the Gulf? For the same reason there are large deposits of oil in other places on the planet. For many millions of years, a wide variety of life forms emerged and perished in this place. The vast plains were deep swamps where the decaying remains of animals and plants accumulated layer after layer from year to year. Many millions of years later, these plains became a seabed with many meters of concentrated, decayed organic matter buried under sedimentary layers. During natural geological processes, all this organic matter was increasingly exposed to high temperatures and pressures, and thus it gradually transformed into the black gold. That's how it happens. Some more conditions have to coincide for the oil to form. There must be not only a layer of organic matter, but also a layer of the so-called source rock on top, in which the resulting oil will accumulate. And above all this, there must be the so-called trap, a layer of impermeable rock, which will prevent the accumulated oil from spreading and seeping in all directions. All this is heated from below by the natural heat of the Earth's interior. With some imagination, you can easily find an analogy with some sort of human laboratory or chemical plant. In fact, everything is the same here. Raw materials, dense containers, heating, and even a certain recipe for preparation, only on a planetary scale. Gradually, What has once been swamps became oil, and the gas deposits became a byproduct, equally valuable. It was exactly the same scenario in other oil-bearing regions. The closest and most recognizable example is the Persian Gulf. And such natural plants have been working all over the planet for millions of years, as if deliberately preparing resources for future mankind, using which it will fly into space. To extract oil and gas from the Gulf of Mexico, special facilities, oil rigs, or platforms are used. These are large structures with drilling rigs, equipment for processing and storing hydrocarbons, living quarters for workers, and other elements. Some are secured on the bottom of the Gulf by steel supports or concrete foundations. Others float on the water surface or are supported by special anchors. The number of fixed and floating oil platforms in the Gulf is enormous. Interestingly, it is not so easy to find out their total number, even out of curiosity, because they amount to thousands. There are about 3,500 of them just along the coastline. But in general, there are more platforms. Some are working, others are under repair. A lot of them are abandoned, and there are even ruined and sunken ones. Totally, about 10,000 oil platforms and rigs have been built here over the history of the Gulf. Exploitation of the oil riches in the Gulf began a long time ago. The first fixed oil platform was built in the USA by Superior Oil, part of ExxonMobil, and Pure Oil, part of Chevron. The platform was placed in the nearshore area of the state of Louisiana, 1.5 kilometers, 0.93 miles from the shore in the Gulf of Mexico in 1938. The water depth at the place of rig is only 4.3 meters, 14.1 feet. Yes, not kilometers, but meters, and there is nothing strange about it. In general, the vast waters of the Gulf, if you look at them from the shore, are misleading. It seems as if these waters were very deep. In fact, you can sail 50 or even 100 kilometers from the shore, and the water depth will only be about 100 feet. Of course, in the early stages of oil development in the Gulf of Mexico, this shallow depth helped the oil companies greatly. But it quickly became clear that the main reserves were located at a depth ranging from 200 meters, 656 feet, to 3,000 meters, 10,000 feet, and the companies would have to work hard to reach them, using much more sophisticated extraction technologies. But when have oil companies ever been stopped by any difficulties? In the 1970s, oil producers began the Great March for deep-sea oil, pushing the imaginary boundary line of oil platforms farther and farther out into the Gulf, to the areas where the equipment had to work in terrible conditions of total darkness, enormous pressure, and extreme cold. But it was still the bottom of the Gulf, and this was just the beginning, because it was necessary to drill further. Sometimes it was necessary to drill several kilometers below the seabed, and the situation there became even more challenging. Extremely high temperatures with the same darkness and even higher pressure. It takes enormous resources to implement such projects. But so far, oil is so valuable that even such mind-blowing investments of oil companies pay off. Currently, there are already about 50 deep-sea oil platforms in the Gulf. You've all seen such platforms, at least in the movies or on TV, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. It is far more interesting to see what is below the sea level in the Gulf of Mexico, especially at the bottom of it. The waters of the Gulf harbor a vast oil infrastructure with pumping stations, pipelines, all sorts of equipment, as well as the subsea part of the oil platforms themselves. The entire bottom of the Gulf is braided with a network of pipelines. Their total length is incredible. about 43,000 miles. If lined up in a single line, this pipe would circle the globe twice. The Gulf is generally known for many records and unbelievable facts. For example, the largest subsea oil well in the world, Perdido, is located here at a depth of about 2.5 kilometers, 1.5 miles, and is capable of producing up to 100,000 barrels of oil per day. It was in the Gulf of Mexico where the world record for the depth of a subsea well at 10,411 meters, 34,156 feet was set in 2017. And one disastrous but curious incident related to the Gulf occurred not in the Gulf itself, but was directly related to its waters. And the reason for it was the pursuit of oil. On November 20th, 1980, while searching for oil in the American Lake Peigneur, a drill accidentally punched a hole in one of the salt mines located under the lake. Water quickly eroded the 35-centimeter hole and rushed down. The lake began to shallow rapidly. Instead of the lake, it would have remained a puddle if it were not for the canal that connected the lake to the Gulf of Mexico. When the water level of the lake dropped, the water from the Gulf gushed out through the canal, restoring the balance. After a while, the lake turned from freshwater to saltwater. Its maximum depth increased 100-fold, and subsequently, the surrounding ecosystem changed completely. Yes, not everything is sunshine and rainbows when it comes to oil infrastructure. This is an obvious fact. Accidents of varying severity occur regularly. In 1979, for example, one of the largest oil spills in history occurred when the Ixtoc-1 drilling rig lost control of a well and spilled about 3 million barrels of oil into the Gulf. And in 2010, an accident happened that shook the world. The popular expression, "life will never be the same again," fits it well. The Deepwater Horizon platform of the BP oil company, British Petroleum, was installed at a depth of 1.5 kilometers, 0.93 miles, 80 kilometers off the coast. It was a huge structure on 4 floating feet attached to a submersible catamaran with a drilling rig mounted on it, fitted with the necessary equipment and with a dwelling unit. It was designed to operate in water depths of up to 2.4 kilometers, 1.5 miles, and was capable of drilling wells to 9.1 kilometers, 5.65 miles. It was the first platform with so-called dynamic positioning. It means that it was kept in position by 8 screw propellers that enabled it to move in either direction to compensate for water movement or wind drift, and it could reach a speed of up to 7.5 kilometers per hour, 4.66 miles per hour. Deepwater Horizon was grounded on March 21, 2000, and launched on February 23, 2001. It operated for a full 9 years without any serious problems, until something went wrong one dreadful April morning. April 20th, 2010 should have been a day of triumph for British Petroleum and the Deepwater Horizon team. The floating drilling platform was about to complete drilling a well extending 3.6 kilometers, 2.23 miles beneath the ocean bottom. It was such a daunting challenge that it had often been compared to flying to the moon. Now, after 74 days of continuous drilling, BP was preparing to seal the Macondo prospect well and leave it as it was until all the production equipment was in place to ensure a regular supply of oil and gas. Over the next few hours, the platform went through a roller coaster of events that could have been included in the safety manuals, and the catastrophe theory gained another vivid example. On April 20th, 2010, at 9:50 a.m., there was an explosion on the platform, which was followed by a fire. At the time of the incident, 126 technicians were working on it. 11 of them died. They were missing and have not been found. The others were rescued. Even 4 firefighting boats could not put out the fire, which lasted 36 hours. Causes of the accident are a topic for a special discussion. Conclusions may be drawn, but the consequences cannot be undone. And the consequences are so dire that it is difficult to even grasp them. The wellhead became depressurized, and a gigantic fountain of oil began to erupt in the sea. Thousands of barrels of oil a day flowed into the waters of the Gulf, according to first estimates. And that was just the beginning. On April 22nd, the burning platform tilted and sank. A large oil spot appeared on the surface of the water at the site of the well and grew rapidly. It became clear that the well was not plugged and continued to eject oil into the water. It was obvious to everyone that this was a horrendous ecological catastrophe, but few could have imagined that this nightmare would last for almost half a year. That's right, the oil leak lasted 152 days, from April 20th, 2010 to September 19th, 2010. Over that period of time, about 5 million barrels of oil flowed out of the well into the Gulf of Mexico. This was the largest offshore oil spill in the history of observation, leaving previous accidents far behind. The disaster had a huge negative impact on the Gulf ecosystems and also severely damaged sustainable sectors of the region's economy, such as fishery and tourism. All U.S. states with access to the Gulf of Mexico were affected by the oil spill, with Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida being the most severely impacted states. The scale of the flora and fauna destruction is even hard to comprehend. On September 8, 2010, BP published a 193-page report on the investigation of the Deepwater Horizon explosion. The report was prepared for 4 months by a team of more than 50 experts, headed by Mark Bly, BP's head of operational safety. According to BP's report, the accident was caused by human error, particularly faulty decisions by personnel, technical problems, and design flaws in the oil platform. Altogether, 6 main reasons for the accident were listed, like the partial meltdown of the reactor core at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in 1979, toxic leaks at the biochemical plant in Bhopal, India in 1984, the Challenger disaster, and the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. These events were not the result of one wrong step or a failure in a particular unit. The Deepwater Horizon disaster was the result of a chain of events. The accident investigation has reconstructed the fatal chain of events that led to the terrible tragedy. October 7th, 2009. BP begins drilling on the 2,280-hectare site it leased back in 2008 for $34 million. However, the Marianas drilling platform that was initially used gets damaged by Hurricane Ida, so it is towed to the shipyard to be repaired. It takes 3 months to replace it with the Deepwater Horizon platform and resume operations. February 6th, 2010. Deepwater Horizon starts drilling operations in the Macondo oil field. To keep up with the schedule, workers hurry, overspeeding the drilling. Soon, the excessive speed causes the well walls to crack, and gas begins to seep in. Engineers seal the lower 600 meters of the well and direct the well to bypass it. These alterations cost a 2-week delay. Mid-March. Mike Williams, chief electronics engineer at Transocean, asks Mark Hay, subsea operations manager, why the gas shutoff functions on the control panel are simply disabled. According to Williams, Hay replied, "That's how everyone here does it." The year before, Williams had noticed that all the emergency lights and indicators on the rig were simply off and would not automatically activate in case of gas leak and fire detection. In March, he saw a worker holding pieces of rubber removed from the well. They were pieces of a critical cylindrical gate valve, one part of the blowout preventer, a multi-story structure of safety latches mounted above the wellhead. According to Williams, Hay said, "It's no big deal." March 30th, 10:54. BP engineer Brian Morrell sends an email to a colleague to discuss an idea of running a single 175mm, 6.88-inch casing string down a well, extending from the wellhead all the way to the bottom. Morrell rejects the safer option of using liner, which offers more stages of protection against gas flowing up the well, claiming that avoiding a liner will save you a significant amount of time and money. But with a liner, adds Ford Brett, an experienced petroleum engineer, the well would have been a lot better protected from all sorts of troubles. April 9th. Ronald Sepulvado, who supervises operations at the well on behalf of BP, reports a leak in one of the preventer controls, which is supposed to receive an electronic signal from the platform to shut in the well and command the hydraulic actuators to shut down the well in an emergency. In such situations, BP must notify Mineral Management Service and suspend drilling operations until this unit is brought back into service. Instead, to shut down the leak, the company switches the faulty unit to the neutral position and continues drilling. No one notified MMS. April 14th. BP submits a request to MMS about the option of using a single string instead of the safer method with a liner. The next day, it receives approval. 2 more additional requests are approved in a matter of minutes. Since 2004, 2,200 wells have been drilled in the Gulf, and only one company has managed to get approval for 3 plan changes within 24 hours. The eerie irony of fate is that 7 months before the disaster, 400 kilometers southeast of Houston, this same drilling platform drilled the deepest well in the world, extending beneath the ocean bottom to a fantastic 10.5 kilometers, 6.52 miles. One record was replaced by another. The saddest associations arise with the Titanic or any other mega projects, which started brightly and ended so quickly and tragically. The comparison with the Titanic also has another rationale. Besides its other roles, the Gulf of Mexico serves as a real graveyard for sunken ships. No one knows precisely how many vessels have met their tragic fate here. However, protecting the future involves understanding the past. The keys to unlocking the rich maritime heritage of the Gulf of Mexico lie in the numerous shipwrecks from different eras resting on the ocean floor throughout the Gulf. These remnants are like time capsules, capturing the essence of their period. Sometimes, explorers make new discoveries that outshine previous ones. Each sunken ship is full of insight and holds immense scientific significance. Stay with us as we share the most intriguing finds of recent years that refresh our historical memory of some epic past events. In the past centuries, the main routes used by the Spaniards to export treasures borrowed from the indigenous American people passed through the Gulf of Mexico. The scale of this resource redistribution can't be compared to any modern financial scheme. Needless to say, with such a scale, various ship accidents were bound to happen, such as storms, pirates, crew sabotage, overloading due to greed, and so on. Quite a lot of ships got sunk. Do you think all these treasures have been found over the centuries? Well, not at all. Searching for sunken treasure at shallow depths is very difficult, even using the most modern methods. Unfortunately, what's peculiar about shallow waters is that sunken ships are quickly engulfed by the sand, becoming unreachable within days, let alone decades. Of course, the Spaniards salvaged many treasures right after the shipwrecks, but most of them still lie at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. Some ships have been found and treasures retrieved, but these instances are rare. As a result, the Gulf of Mexico and parts of the Caribbean basin remain the richest area in underwater treasures. Some experts estimate that the treasure lying at the seabed between North and South America amount to trillions of dollars. Nowadays, only a few enthusiasts are dedicated to searching for sunken ships with treasures. Paradoxically, if you want to get rich by finding gold in the Gulf, you must already be wealthy. It's a laborious, technically complex, legally ambiguous, and generally quite costly endeavor. That's why if sunken ships are discovered now, it's usually by chance or as a side bonus during other research. But each of these finds is a high-profile event that keeps everyone talking about it for a long time. In 2019, American oceanographers found the remains of a sunken ship at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, which is presumed to have been launched in the mid-19th century. This discovery was reported on the website of the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. The discovery was made on May 16, 2019, approximately 250 kilometers, 155 miles away from the coast, at a depth of about 500 meters, 1,640 feet, when NOAA specialists were testing a new remotely controlled vehicle for studying the seabed. For some reason, no official statements were made for 2 weeks following the discovery. Eventually, however, the remarkable find was reported to the public. According to NOAA, it was a 37-meter, 121-foot wooden vessel whose lower part was sheathed in copper below the waterline. As a result, it got well preserved, and one could even make out the number 2109 on the hull, although its meaning has remained unclear. Experts note that the ship apparently sank due to fire on board, as evidenced by the missing masts, rigging elements, and several charred fragments of the hull. At the same time, NOAA experts find it difficult to determine the ship's affiliation or the approximate date of its sinking. Another remarkable discovery is the wreckage of the brig called Industry, which sank in the early 19th century. Industry was discovered as a result of the collaborative efforts of scientists and NOAA archaeologists, along with partners from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, BOEM, and Search Inc., a private archaeological firm. In early 2022, NOAA and its partners announced the discovery of a sunken 207-year-old whaling ship. The remains of the 64-foot, two-masted wooden brig provide insight into a lesser-known chapter of American history when descendants of enslaved Africans and Native Americans served as the primary crew in one of the country's oldest industries. Built in 1815 in Westport, Massachusetts, the vessel hunted whales in the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic Ocean, and the Caribbean basin for 20 years. On May 26, 1836, however, the hunter ship itself fell victim to a powerful storm. The violent tempest broke its two masts. The vessel suffered a significant hull breach and soon sank. The crew managed to escape and return to Westport on another whaling ship. Researchers identified the ship from video footage taken by an underwater robot at a depth of 1,800 meters, 5,905 feet. Few artifacts were found on board, as most of the cargo and rigging had been removed before the sinking. However, the diverse composition of the ship's crew drew the researchers' attention. Today, we celebrate the discovery of a lost ship that will help us better understand the rich story of how people of color succeeded as captains and crew members in the nascent American whaling industry of the early 1800s, said NOAA Administrator Dr. Rick Spinrad, Ph.D. The discovery reflects how African Americans and Native Americans prospered in the ocean economy, despite facing discrimination and other injustices. Another captivating yet eerie discovery is the wreckage of U-166, a German submarine which sank during World War II. As the only German submarine lost in the Gulf of Mexico, its story encompasses not only war and human tragedy, but also the true circumstances surrounding dramatic events of the past. On July 30th, 1942, U-166 attacked and sank the American ship Robert E. Lee in the Gulf of Mexico. At the time, the ship was under the escort of the U.S. Navy patrol ship PC-566, approximately 45 miles, 72 kilometers south of the Mississippi River Delta. PC-566 immediately attacked the U-boat with depth bombs. Based on oil traces on the water's surface, it was concluded that the submarine had been hit. PC-566 picked up survivors from Robert E. Lee and returned to port. However, Navy leadership doubted the account of PC-566's skipper, Herbert G. Claudius. Furthermore, they criticized his battle tactics, reprimanded him, and relieved him of command. On August 1st, a U.S. Coast Guard J-4F-1 Wigian amphibious plane spotted a submarine about 100 miles, 160 kilometers off the coast of Houma, Louisiana. The aircraft attacks, dropping a depth bomb. The submarine made an emergency dive during the attack, but pilots White and Boggs reported its destruction. After the war, German archives confirmed the loss of U-166 in the Gulf of Mexico. It was declared missing along with all 52 crew members. The pilots received government awards. White was awarded the Distinguishing Flying Cross and Boggs the Air Medal. For nearly 60 years, it was believed that the aircraft pilots had sunk the submarine. However, in 2001, a re-evaluation of the submarine's fate revealed that U-166 was really sunk by depth bombs from patrol ship PC-566. Pilots White and Boggs had actually attacked another German submarine, U-171. This submarine reported an air attack on August 1st, 1942 in the same area and sustained only minor damage. On December 16, 2014, U.S. Navy Secretary Ray Mabus posthumously awarded the captain of PC-566 and Herbert G. Claudius himself the Legion of Merit for combat heroism. 70 years later, we know that Claudius's report after the action was absolutely correct, Mabus said. Claudius's ship did sink that U-boat, and it's never too late to set the record straight. But one of the most fascinating discoveries to date is the place with 3 shipwrecks known as the Monterey Shipwreck Site. Resting deep in the ocean, the remains of 3 wooden ships believed to have sunk in the early 19th century were uncovered. These sites have been provisionally named Monterey Shipwreck Site A, B, and C. As unique monuments of maritime history and culture, they offer valuable insights into life and trade on the Pacific coast of North America. During a 2014 expedition in the Gulf of Mexico, aboard the NOAA Okeanos Explorer, researchers made an attempt to uncover the enigmatic and tragic history of these shipwrecks. Monterey Shipwreck Site A, the most extensively studied of the 3, lies at a depth of 1,310 meters, 4,300 feet. The discovery of 2 large cannons on board led researchers to believe that they were dealing with the remains of a well-armed privateer. In one picture, one can see a large cannon seemingly mounted on a swiveling carriage. The barrel on the right rests on another cannon. The wreckage, now home to various marine fauna, has long been submerged underwater. A wide range of artifacts dating back to the early 19th century was also unearthed. This tumultuous period witnessed nation building, civil wars, and independence movements in the regions and colonies around the Gulf of Mexico, including the expanding United States and Latin America. But these 3 shipwrecks weren't discovered simultaneously. Monterey A was discovered first, with the Corps of Exploration later discovering 2 additional sites containing the remains of aged wooden ships. Suddenly, the mystery expanded threefold. As it was revealed, Monterey B sank with a cargo of hides and large white blocks of an unidentified substance. This might be cattle fat for making candles, natural resin for lacquer production, or even natural rubber. A lot of pottery on board implies that the ship may have come from Mexico. Monterey C, the largest and least examined of the shipwreck sites, is also the most enigmatic. The ship suffered significant damage upon hitting the seabed deeper than 4,000 feet, 1,220 meters. The ships sank in close proximity, nearly 200 miles, 320 kilometers from land. What makes it tragic is that they likely sank almost simultaneously during the same storm. These 3 vessels serve as testimony to an extraordinary period in the Gulf of Mexico's history, characterized by colonization, revolution, independence, piracy, trade, and warfare. As scientists persist in studying the wreckage using cutting-edge technology, we might unearth even more facts about the events of that long-forgotten era.